The views presented on this broadcast do not necessarily represent that of Rise Multiversity or its individual members.
Good day. This is Sienna Lea from Rise Multiversity. How are you all doing? I am here with an extraordinary gentleman from down under, Bud Hixon. And due to our compromised bandwidth across Ecuador to Australia, this is a brief look at him, and then we're going to go into just an audio feed. So you want to say hello, Bud?
Yeah. G'day, Sienna. Thank you very much. Looking forward to talking to you and your audience.
Oh, I'm looking very forward to bringing you on as a mentor for Rise. We're going to, okay, I know that we have to turn this off now. Okay. Bud is, I am delighted to say, a new mentor of Rise Multiversity. He is got a very diverse background, and he's bringing a particular presence and set of skills that I think are going to be very useful in helping us to come out of our separation and start creating the kinds of projects and new paradigm small communities or little micro groups or however we're inspired, because in 2016 it is our mission to, as a global mission of peace says, to turn the vision into a mission and to stop staring at doomsday and all the agendas. And although we've had a huge learning curve, seeing all the plots, all the DNA manipulation, all the alien interference, all of the cabal and Illuminati manipulations, mainly our listenership has been all about doing the deep research and getting a sense of where we really are and the level of attack that we're under, which is hugely important. And now it feels to strengthen our soul force and our fields and to bring hope and inspiration and to bring our authentic selves forward. We're moving into an area of empowering our awakening and manifesting. Problem is that in a new paradigm, we bring all the wounds from the old, all the mind control, all the places we're broken in separation, all the fragmentation. And we're all looking to heal all of that. One thing that I've learned from my community experiences are that these incubators, these places where we can be together with a new set of ethics and a true set of morality and integrity, and learn to serve one another in life in the best way possible, is the next step in my feeling and in many people's feelings. But how do we really do that? So we're dedicating Rise, and I know there are many of you out there that are doing your own projects as well, to education. Not to just assume that because we're holding a beautiful vision that we can manifest it. And this is why I have been so excited to bring Bud on board. And this interview, I want to do more than just interview you, Bud, on your skill set, because it is presence. It is the embodied wisdom of the divine masculine that I really sense in Bud and that we need so deeply. So we're going to dive deep here into who this man is and what he brings to the table. And I am so honored and excited to do that. Welcome again, Bud. I've been saying your name wrong. Bud, like wood. Okay. Is that better? Am I saying it right?
That's good, Sienna.
Okay. All right. I would love to hear about your amazing childhood and go from there, because it's so key to who you are. Can you tell us, you had a childhood on a cattle station? And yes, we need to know what a cattle station is because a lot of our listeners are in the United States.
Okay, yes, I'd be delighted to. A cattle station in Australia is the equivalent to a North American ranch. It's an extensive piece of property, usually in what we call the outback, where as a child we raised beef cattle. I was born in a town called Bathurst, west of Sydney, in New South Wales, inland from the east coast of Australia. And at the age of 6 years old, my father fulfilled one of his dreams in buying and owning and running a cattle station. And my mother came off the land as well, so she was an integral part to it. Anyhow, from my perspective, we packed up and got in a truck early in the morning and drove about 2 kilometres across the Australian outback to Melinda Downs, which was a cattle station on the banks of the Dismal Creek, about 140 kilometres north of Cloncurry, which officially has a record for the hottest place in Australia. And so it was quite a shock for us as kids. We'd gone from a pretty comfortable, fairly sheltered life in a beautiful town in the hills to the outback. And it began an incredible journey for me. And it was really the place that I really learned to love and appreciate my mother, both my biological mother, but my eternal mother, Mother Earth. This apparently hostile environment, we realized that, once we settled in there, just how beautiful it was, living in so-called nowhere, which I refer to as the middle of everywhere, because there is no such place as nowhere. So that was the beginning of my journey in the environmental movement, and where I first really connected on this beautiful cattle station. We were Dad's workforce. We'd go mustering on these huge areas on horses. We were newcomers, and we'd say to Dad, and okay, this is great, Dad. We'll follow the cows. And what happens if we run out of water? Dad would say, oh, that's okay. He said, look, if you run out of water, just get off your horse, get a rock, and put it in your mouth and suck on it. Oh, okay, Dad, no worries. Oh, we'll see you later, and off we'd go. So it was tough, but it was beautiful, and it certainly helped me to become stronger and to really appreciate the good fortune that I experienced in this life.
All right. Well, we're jumping from that beginning that certainly got you into an embodied connection with our mother planet to becoming to studying computer science and pioneering microcomputer industry in Australia. How did that happen? What do you wish to share about that? I don't want to direct you in a particular way because I know you have a thread here to weave for us.
Yeah, well, one of the great beauties about living in the outback is that we had a lot of time. We were forever in a vehicle going somewhere for hours on end, even when we were mustering or building fences or doing these incredibly laborious tasks. There was so much time to think. And my mind, would whirl off on all sorts of ideas. And I was aware of the coming of computers. I mean, obviously computers had been around before I was born, but they hadn't been in our lives personally. They were sort of mythical creatures. So I used to fantasize a bit about computers and, this coming age of computers. And I used to think, oh, this will be so great having computers because, they can do all these mundane jobs of digging post holes and all the stuff that I sort of saw as really secondary. And these computers that enable us to spend so much more time doing the joyous things in life. So my fascination for computers was very utopic. I have to say that I'm much more a Luddite nowadays. But so when I was at school, went away to boarding school, thousands of kilometres away from my home. It used to take several days on a bus to get there, the dirt roads, very South American, in fact.
I hear you.
And I had my first experience with computers was at school. I had a great maths teacher, and he had a fascination in computers. And I remember the first computer I ever dealt with was what looked like a calculator to us. Now, it was very small. And I remember we had these little magnetic strips that we would put in one end and they would go through. And these magnetic strips had 2K of memory. This was, whoa, 2K of memory on this computer, and we could write a program and put it on this little magnetic strip, and this was leading edge stuff. So this was my first experience with computers in 1975, and then we went to the university where they had a big computer in a room, in a sealed room with people in white coats. This was all pretty out there, and we'd take our punch cards along and hand them in and come back in a week and get our punch cards back with a piece of paper wrapped around it telling us whether we'd been successful or not. So this was my introduction to the computer industry. And after I finished school, I entered to study computer science at a university in Sydney. And I went and studied computer science. And it was fascinating, but the great joys of liberation and fun life in the big smoke certainly got me pretty distracted from just the computer science. I spent a lot of time in the dungeon, which was a bar over the road in the Agincourt Hotel. And I remember I ended up getting excluded from computing science, partly because I poured beer over my lecturers, but it was a great good fortune for me, believe it or not, in that I got excluded, and it was a great prompt. One of my lecturers, a maths lecturer, said, "Oh, that's no problem." He said, "Just get your reference together and go out there and knock on the doors of these places." And sure enough, I did. And I got employed by a small company called Electronic Concepts. And this began a whole new adventure for me. This company had these funny little things called Apple computers, and no one had heard of Apples. And, the people at the university thought they were just toys. Anyhow, within 18 months, I was Australasian sales manager for Apple Computer. And hence became another adventure in my life. I had 8 staff and a sales budget of 50 million, and it was like I was on the top of a rocket, and within no time at all, my lecturers were coming back to me and trying to find out what was happening in the computer industry. There was this incredible reversal of fortune.
Wow.
So that was my introduction to the world of microcomputers and this thing called Apple that really liberated.
Okay. I want to move on here, if I may, to conclude the life experience section, so that we can dive into what we're actually going to be bringing to the people right now. I think they're both very important, of course, because it shows the diverse range of your life experience, which is the foundational key of why you can work with groups of people to help them with their governance issues and how to cooperate and to connect. So we have to have people that embody certain level of mature, grounded, and broad-based wisdom and life experience to be our facilitators and mentors of this. And they're very few and far between. I really do feel that you are one of those people, Bud, Can we jump into the land care and reconciliation movement that you pioneered? And I don't know how you got from your Apple computer sales a lifetime into your land care and reconciliation movement lifetime, but because those seem to be pretty broad opposites.
Yeah, as you can see, I did a lot of major turns in my life, and anyhow, I'd been in the computing industry for about 10 years and experienced lots of fascinating things. Started a small company called Micro Library International, and we wrote software for the oil industry, and should have made a fortune, but always kept making ethical decisions that were career limiting. But in 1985, my mother tragically passed away, and this was a profound shift for me. And at that point, I decided to leave the bright lights of Sydney and to return to my home in northwest Queensland, partly to be with my father, who obviously, was pretty shocked. We all were. And on going home again, to continue the work that I'd actually started with my mother. My mother had been inspired by my adventures and had gone back and done a postgraduate diploma in computing.
Wow.
And in 1985, we had started Cloncurry Computer Consultants, which was quite bizarre for all the locals because, they were into horses and cows and weather, and computers were sort of as far away from Cloncurry as they could imagine. Anyhow, I continued this, but what became apparent to me was that the state of the land was degraded, not so much our property, but in general. There was a lot of pressure on the landholders to run more cattle than they necessarily would have preferred to. We had a lot of weed issues. There were a whole stack of land management issues that I helped pioneer getting a collective approach to. And it came under the guise of a thing called the land care movement. So anyhow, this started, unbeknownst to me, a unique alliance between the conservative pastoral industry and the environmental movement in Australia, championed by the then Prime Minister Bob Hawke. And I took the initiative and founded the Cloncurry Land Care Group, along with a lot of other people. I became the first secretary because it wasn't roles that people liked doing in the outback. And for the next 14, 15 years was either the secretary or the spokesperson, and became the first elected member on the Queensland Land Care Council. And we didn't change so much on the ground, but we played a huge role in changing people's attitude, getting people thinking about these things and working collectively.
Well, that's a huge change of consciousness from your Apple computer lifetime.
Exactly. But I could use my skills that I found at Apple to traverse these huge distances, to engage in these topics, to show people that we could collaborate over distance. And I saw this was that computers, as I'd imagined as a kid, had more advantage for those who were isolated. Here we're talking across the Pacific Ocean, and for those who were right in the middle of the metropolis. So I very much was a champion both for this liberating technology and for doing constructive things with it.
Beautiful. All right. So next, the divine arts and energetic healing.
Okay, first I'll go on and talk about the reconciliation movement, if you don't mind, because I think it's very useful.
Yes, I jumped over. I apologize.
So I've been very involved in land management, and then another movement appeared on the horizon, and it was another thing that I was called to participate in. As most people would know, Australia is the home of the oldest living culture on planet Earth, the Australian Aboriginals. And I had once again the great good fortune of living in the outback. On the property next door, there was actually a tribe of people living a semi-traditional lifestyle. It certainly wasn't perfect, but looking back on it, it was more idealistic than often the situation is nowadays. They lived a semi-nomadic life on the property next door. They engaged in the property activities, in a fairly parochial way, but the tribe would contribute collectively different jobs, but get on with their own lifestyle on this property. And when we'd go next door, instead of going up to the big house, first thing we did was head down the creek to, in total fascination and awe at seeing this incredible culture still alive and still practicing their traditions. So when the reconciliation movement started, once again, a conscious willing to address the huge gap and inequities that exist in this country and still do, let me tell you. I was called to get involved and became an early member of Rural Landholders for Coexistence. And we put together, much against the wishes of the ruling elites, a series of talking common ground workshops across Australia and getting people together. And it was really inspiring. We helped start to bridge the wounds. We've still got a long way to go. But this really has engaged me with Aboriginal people across Queensland and still working very closely on that today.
Wow. So you're saying that progress is being made, but in very minute baby steps, and there's still a huge issue.
Well, in fact, what happens is that whenever there's the supposed breakthrough, it seems that they continually give a poison chalice to Aboriginal people. The latest one is through a thing called native title, where the High Court acknowledged that the Aboriginal people had been here and in fact were the stewards of the land, even though they didn't seem to be doing it in a European context, much to the horror of the government. But the government have turned that decision by the High Court around to capture the Aboriginals again with a poison chalice, saying, yes, you just have to prove who you are. And so for 10, 15 years, the Aboriginals have been fighting each other to prove who they are. The lawyers have been getting all the money. And once again, it's a poison chalice. They've now got to give up their traditional rights, their sovereignty, which they always had, to become petty bureaucrats. So, yes, it goes on and on and on, but the resilience of Aboriginal people and their inherent wisdom and beauty keep shining through. And, despite the atrocities that are going on, we're transcending it gently and in ways, and I live in hope.
You go out and have walkabouts with them and walk barefoot. You're a barefoot walker. You don't wear shoes, do you?
I haven't worn shoes, unless I get on and, go to an airport or somewhere where I'm forced to. But no, Spirit told me to throw my shoes away about 8 or so years ago. And that was a profound shift for me. It taught me how to walk again, because when we've got shoes on, we tend to march. And I go everywhere in the outback, walking barefoot. People look at me, think I'm nuts. But, the Aboriginal people have been doing this for at least 140,000 years, I'd say quite a lot longer. And it's really helped to connect me, apart from the incredible health benefits of grounding. But it's certainly something that the Aboriginals really respect. People that can walk on country is...
Can you tell us a little bit about where you are? I know you the piece of land that you are. I keep holding that this does turn into a place where people come and experience you and do connect with the Aboriginals and do workshops and groups. It's certainly in my wish list of manifestation. It looks spectacular, this piece of land that you're on, Bud.
Yeah. Well, now I live on the Atherton Tablelands, which is in the hills above Cairns in northeast Queensland, on a beautiful property that I call Ballintaggart. I'm surrounded on three sides by World Heritage Rainforest. Quite similar to Ecuador. In many ways, it's a sister location to here. This is a biodiversity hotspot here. In any 1 hectare of our forest, we have more biodiversity than North America or Europe in numbers of species. And I've been blessed to come here, and it gives me great fortitude, and it helps me to take on the contemporary issues of our day, at least those that call me. And yes, today we had an introduction to human design here, so it is a thoroughfare. Some people think, it's isolated at the end of the road, no one would come here, but quite the contrary. So yes, it's a very different landscape to that I grew up in, Sienna.
To our indigenous and our Earth Mother roots, and to live from that place. It is the organic matrix, not the artificial construct. And we're informed with a completely different reality. As you know, I also live in an area like that in Ecuador, and it's my intention in the coming years to make a space available for people to come here and experience the naturaleza, as they call it here, and the beauty and the biodiversity and the intensity of the energy for the shift and the change it's powerful, but it's very gentle and kind at the same time, and it's so essential for people to have time like that right now. So, Bud, you went then from all of this into studying the divine arts and energetic healing. Did you want to give us a little bit of a view into that before we dive into the body of what you're bringing now through the synthesis of all of these different journeys?
Yeah, well, my love affair with the divine arts actually started, a long time ago. When I was a child, my mother gave me an insight to mythology and the world that was not so much part of running a cattle station. Dad was very much, and if you couldn't touch it, it wasn't real. But Mum loved mythology, and it really helped to round out and give me a very rich upbringing, because my mother actually taught us over the school of the air, as they called it, which was a bit like this situation we're in now, Sienna, where we're supposed to talk to remote teachers over the radio. But we were so isolated that we didn't even get the air. It was quite a paradox. And we used to just get our school come in the mail, which would arrive weekly, and we'd fill in these lessons and send them back. But so my mother was the teacher in so many ways, my mum, and she introduced me to astrology, and I found this fascinating. Anyhow, I realised that astrology was, a little like the Pacific Ocean. It was deep and broad. So I spent a lot of time, initially in wonder on the edge of this great ocean. But I knew that I had to traverse it somehow. And I sort of initially started to go around it and look at things like numerology that were a little bit easier to get a handle on, palmistry and so forth. But for the last 30 years, I've been self-taught on astrology and the divine arts, reading with tarot and energetic healing and many different modalities that I integrate in to suit my own skills and gifts, into being able to see beyond the mundane, to able to understand energetics of people and circumstances. And these are the gifts I hope to share with the Rise community, because it seems to me that they can play a very, very valuable part in how we can confront the crisis going on in our world and actually embrace it as a means of transforming ourselves and, in due course, being part of the shift that we wish to see in the world outside us.
Well, there's definitely a process involved in returning to our organic roots on the planet, in the cosmos, and within ourselves. And we met 18 months ago when I was doing a series on community. And at that time, the conversation we engaged in was around governance. And perhaps we need to contextualize the next piece of this discussion around your passion for that. Can you speak to that a bit for us now?
Yeah. And it's interesting because it ties in with South America again. I had the great fortune to travel to South America on 2 occasions. And the second one, I was at the International Permaculture Conference and Convergence in Brazil. And on going home, travel's so profound for me and always helps to shift me. And I just was so aware of the fact that, while there were so many parallels between South America and Australia, what really struck me was how, being part of the Protestant Anglo-Saxon world, just how much further we had moved away from the collective approach to life. That South America and the Latinos were still much more group orientated and had priority over social norms as opposed to the power of the individual that we see in the United States and in Europe, in countries like Australia. So on returning to Australia, I was enlivened to start looking at community more, intentional communities. And for the first 6 months, we had a whole series of workshops in the region here, getting people talking about communities and our aspirations for getting closer together. And so we've had community here at Ballantaggart. We've tried a few times and we've fallen off that horse. And I'm keen to get back on. But I also realized that, I have to personally do more work on myself. And that was how we came together through your Shadowlands and your encouragement to embrace our shadows, which are really a key part in a healthy community, is realizing and recognizing these shadows. And when they appear, to have techniques for us to confront them. I say the conflict is a very useful tool in community, but it needs to be confronted. It needs to be seen as a blessing so that we can use the conflict, which is inevitable for all of us. It's part of the transformational process. That's what's happening on the planet. It's in chaos because we're confronting these shadows that are going on. And so I've really been focusing very much in governance, which, has got to include good confrontation processes, of getting us to address our shadows, both at the individual and collective basis. So that was where our meeting came, Sienna. And I'm still looking at governance. It's a key issue for me, and how we can develop the glue and basically work out how we can agree to disagree. To me, that's a real test, because we need diversity. It's so easy for us to find, just a common like-minded group. The most successful communities are generally the spiritual communities, and I really respect them. But the communities that I'm trying to build are more avant-garde, are more trying to be on the front edge and not restricted by a very tight moral code. In that sense, not that there can't be good morality to it, but that it doesn't have to be restricting in our sense of sovereignty and possibilities. So to me, this is...
I'd like to address that for a moment, if I may. It's true. Most of the intentional communities that have survived because they have a strict belief system that everyone adheres to. And that's what the glue has been. It's outsourcing our authority to an idea or a person or a guru, a central figure. And without them, we seem to go into the chaos of not knowing where we are. And then our shadows come out, and then the interference comes out, and the agenda of keeping us in separation is won, and more times than not. And the next year, we're going to be in Rise as well, creating incubators and education and conversations and groups and meeting places and workshops and such, both in 3D and in cyberspace, that addresses the shadow piece first and foremost. I finally, after all of these decades, realized, how about we create these incubator community and projects with the idea of, first, we learn the tools of radical self-responsibility. We know how not to act out of reactivity, and we know how to own our own projections. And this involves a lot of self-exploration, to be sure, but this is my area, and there will be others in this area. So this is numero uno. And then after that, we learn how to connect from authentic self in organic flow without predator-victim archetypes. And then we learn how to collaborate. And then we can manifest big new paradigm visions. But without that, we're destined to keep repeating the programming that our enslavers want us to repeat and keep energizing us to repeat. So I think it's so incredibly urgent that we throw all the models out the window, say thank you very much. We needed all of those baby steps. But I agree that new communities have to be strong, self-responsible, dedicated people who don't lay their belief structures on one another and work towards common goals that they agree upon. But how do we get there, really? How do we really manifest this? Now, I see that in our little list here, did we skip over experiencing protecting Mother Earth with Pachamama, which is absolutely on target, because we need to unite around a common goals, not common beliefs, and show up with our full beings in, I love the word, actually, thank you, Jerry, Saint-Ange, for contributionism. Service is good, but I actually don't agree with the service to self, service to other division. I think we have to have both, because the martyrdom of giving everything away to other people is very much a part of the Western paradigm, and it creates incredibly unsatiated, miserable people that are just much more prone to laying trips and control trips and hurting one another because of their frustration. So I like the contributionism idea, and I think it resonates with who you are as well. And so let's dive into, unless you want to take it somewhere else, Bud, but by all means, let me know. This experiencing protecting Mother Earth, Pachamama, it's the Quechua word for the planet, Pachamama. And,
yeah, well, it certainly goes on from this theme of us being disconnected, focus on our own activities. And that's why we came out of this discussion of community. That, you know, we are seeking a better world, you know, most of us, and it's because of the trauma both within ourselves, but what we see outside ourselves that aspires us to live a better world, to live a better life. And I think this is a key thing that unites us, Sienna, and I'm sure most of the members of the RISE community, that we want to be part of changing. And once again, it's the crisis that we see out there that has been my motivation, you know, whether it be in the land care movement, whether it be reconciliation. You know, I'm really motivated by what the pain and suffering that I see in the world. And yet I realize how privileged I am, you know. I'm incredibly privileged. I live in a beautiful place. I have incredible freedoms when I look at, my brothers and sisters around the planet. But I feel compelled to do something with my good fortune. I love the French word noblesse. Nobility means to honor your good fortune, to put something back. And to this extent, I'm very keen to try and work out how we can do that collectively. And this is such a challenge to us, As humans, we want to collaborate. We love to collaborate, but we get so wounded through collaboration because we are wounded ourselves, and we don't seem to, particularly in the West, have the skills to collaborate effectively. And this was part of the great inspiration of going to South America and to Africa and a lot of countries that haven't lost their collectivism. So what I realized is that we have to address our own pain. And this is what I saw in community, is that even with good people, community could fall apart because crisis inevitably raises itself. And we have to embrace this, see this as testing the strength of our bonds and the strength of our glue and direction. When the novelty of community wears off, the shadows rise. And so we need to be able to address our dysfunction. And so what I've really been doing now in one of these periods between getting back on the horse of community is to try and go deeper, to actually say, okay, it takes more than just good people, We have to be able to embrace these shadows personally and collectively. And this is where we're taking this discussion, in that I'm looking deeper into our own psyche, our own vibrational energy, our own vibrational health, so that we can look at that when we come together in conflict with others, instead of blaming the other, as I've been prone to in the past, and saying, well, it didn't work, you can go, I'm going to trial with someone else. And so this is why I see that the pain out there that we can see visually, to really be effective in changing that situation, we actually need to go within and start to address our own crisis, and then find the skills to do this collectively. And so this is the motivation in getting involved with RISE and looking at these skills that I've learned, some of them, the divine arts, in finding out how we can address our grief and our suffering collectively, and being able to stay on this wonderful horse of collaboration.
Beautiful. And so let's speak a little bit about the design of the integration of your cosmic attunement astrology, because one of the things I've learned, because you've been gracious enough to do charts on me and most everyone in RISE, and showing strength and weaknesses, places where we're highly developed and skilled, places where we don't exist at all, which has been a great relief in my experience, because then I can go, okay, well, I have that part. I don't have the other parts. So let's find the people that have the other parts, and let's not feel inadequate when somebody shows up who's brilliant in an area that we have Zippo in. It's like, great, that person complements. And then the understanding of, and I know we're going to go into a second podcast, much more detail about this, fascinating understanding our organic design, because we are fragmented. We are in pieces. We have these splits. We need one another, not in a codependence, but to hook ourselves up, to be grounded, to find strength in parts of us that aren't totally already there, defined. We are all Humpty Dumpty that fell off the wall. We're all in pieces. And I think that there's a lot of shame that I know I've had, and I know the people I've worked with have, in what messes we are. We see it as a mess because we're all these fragmented pieces and they're not even communicating with each other. And so then we develop ego structures to defend our supposed inadequacies. And then we're done. Then we're lunch for the dark side, as Beth Green would always say, because as soon as we're defending our position and hiding our inadequacies, we can't function as a unit. So this is why I love the work that you're bringing, because it shows us our strengths and weaknesses. It shows us our operating systems. And then we can create incubators of complementary people. And besides, it's absolutely fascinating. And it is a different way of managing everything. For example, this is just a brief example, that as a generator, that's one of the types. We'll go into all this more later. But as a generator, my and not my intellectual idea or analysis of everything, which I can do, but that isn't where my deep connection to source and my own real direct knowing is. It's in this real sacral and and I don't even, a lot of times I don't bother to even ask that part of me. So I would like to hear you speak on that a bit, about the designing these new collaborative systems, wherever you want to go with it at this point, Bud.
Sure. Okay, so we each have our different modalities at healing, and ultimately, what I've recognized through all these wonderful adventures that I've been fortunate to engage with in such diverse locations and on such diverse topics, is that ultimately I realize that my purpose here in this incarnation is to heal, not just planet and not just cultures, but to heal us, to be part of this incredible opportunity we have to shift the consciousness on the planet, to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat, as I like to think of it. So I use very many modalities, starting with things as simple as numerology, which is so profound, just with the numbers of our birthday, simple but exquisite. Traditional astrology, which is where I started. My mother introduced me to what we call tropical astrology or Western astrology. And I studied this for a while, and then I came across one day Vedic astrology, Hindu astrology, as some may understand it. And this was very confronting to me, because I'd spent all this time investing in Western astrology and thinking, what wonderful our culture is. And then I found a different system, and I thought, the way I was brought up, things are either right or wrong. Which one's right? Is what I've been studying been a waste of time? But by exploring it and sticking with it, I realized that no, not at all, that these two different astrologies were complementary, that the data set was exactly the same. It was the location of the planets at my time of birth, and that what was different about them was perspective. That in Western astrology, our astrology is the perspective of our solar system, as opposed to the Vedic astrology, which is from the context perspective of our galaxy, which are actually about 24 degrees out of sync. So this was really a big revelation to me. And once I'd worked out that these were just wheels within the bigger clock, it enabled me then to embrace all sorts of other astrologies: Mayan astrology, Chinese astrology, Celtic astrology, indigenous North American astrology. And I could realize that these things were complementary, and this we could bring in different cultural views that were not at odds with each other, totally complementary, often with slightly different language. So, from here I've gone in to look at a whole stack of other systems, and the most recent one is a thing called human design. And if you get on the internet, you can find a lot about human design. But again, it's another astrology. But the really profound thing about human design is that it recognizes that we are binary consciousness, that we actually have two astrologies within each of us, a little bit about like binary sun systems, that we have the consciousness, the astrology of our mind, which is the one we're familiar with in tropical astrology, our birth date. But we also have the second astrology, which is the astrology of our body, of our vehicle. And human design is really about getting us integrated between our head and our heart, as the great sages would put it. But human design goes further than this. It defines our heart in more detail. So that you were talking about, Sienna, is really the language of our sacral. For those who have sacral authority, as such as yourself, but some of us have different authorities internally, and human design teaches us how to do the dance between our mind and our body. And it's incredibly powerful, incredibly profound. It's extensive, like astrology itself. It's a large ocean. It's not complex in that it requires rocket science or anything, but it does take somewhat gentle navigation to understand this beautiful ocean, because there's a lot to it. So that's what I'm hoping to share with you and the RISE community and people beyond, is to look at how these suite of divine arts, I use things like tarot and theta healing and many, many different modalities when I'm looking at individuals and helping them to harmonize internally. So we start with the individual, i.e. in the charts that we've done, but this is so profound in that it can move from the individual into partnerships. We can look at the dynamics in partnerships, and we can look at the dynamics in collectives, in groups of people. As you were saying, that, we bring different aspects of the human experience to the table.
Well, I wanted just to insert something just briefly there. Just a little example. For example, if I may, I'm a generator. You're an emotional generator. So from what I understand, you need some time to process when big things happen. You need to move through the feeling space where, and you're a split or something, and I'm a single. So I tend to, if I'm listening to myself, to the and I'm grounded and I'm anchored, I'm present, I can get what needs to happen just right in that moment. And it's not a better or worse. We literally have different processes, and I'm bringing this up just as a little example here, because it's helped me really understand some other people in my life who have more of an emotional generator component, where I see them, and I didn't recognize it before, because normally we look through our own filters. We think everyone is us. And this, certainly in the Western me culture, we've been programmed really to think everybody has the same operating system as us. But it just helped me to go, wait a minute, look, he needs to step back and move through there. I need to stop pounding on him. I need to give him space for that. And if I just take a few breaths and let that person go through that, then they can come back. Then we're still in sync. And it's just a subtle thing, but it makes all the difference in being able to cooperate with this particular individual, which I'm very grateful for, Bud. So I just wanted to insert that there. Hope that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Human design is the science of differentiation. We see, it's quite clear that we're not all the same, but yet the so-called education system, really is based on the premise that we are all the same. And so why this is so powerful is it shows us how we are different, how we operate differently. Yes. You are a pure generator, to use the language of human design, which means that you can make decisions in the moment. And ultimately, life is about navigating, in the three-dimensional space and it's predicated on the decisions that we make. So human design, like many of these great skills for navigating our life, is really about how to make better decisions. And for me, as an emotional person with an inner authority in my solar plexus, I need to take time to process. If I make decisions in the moment, like the education system, you've got 5 seconds to tell me whether it's right or wrong. Mm-hmm. This is setting me up to fail, because I need to let my body, my vehicle, the part of me that's in this life, not the passenger as my mind, take time to process, because I might be, on cloud 9 and I'm going to say yes to anything. But, a day later or 2 days later, I crash and I go, what did I agree to do? Are you kidding? Uh-huh. So, yes, we operate very differently. This is just one example of that. There's many different ways for us to get the right dance between our mind, which is in the moment 24/7, constantly throwing up other great ideas that we should be jumping on. And human design basically gives us a very simple technique to know how we are unique as individuals and how we make good decisions that integrate our mind and our thinking with our body's inner truth.
And I wanted to also point out something I found great benefit in your work is in building these incubators or small groups on task for their contributionism. We have different roles, and I can't remember which aspect, but you could define, okay, you're a leader, or George is a manifester. He's an initiator of big ideas, but then this person has a different role. This person has a different role, because we've been so separate, and everyone wants to find their fundamental purpose. I find your work really helpful because it looks at a community of people. What would your role be within a unified field of interaction of people, and it completely shifts your understanding of yourself. And I'd love to hear you speak a little bit about that, because I think it's so valuable.
Yeah. Firstly, just a correction. It's not my work. There's nothing new under the sun. There's just the veils are falling and we're becoming lighter. I'm a facilitator of this information through my good fortune. Yes, we all hybridize it. We bring our own gifts. I add value to this knowledge, which is not owned by anybody, where the planets are when we are born. But I do pay respect to Ra and all of the many sages who have helped to make this information accessible to all of us. But yes, in this quest for collaboration, it was really clear to me, at a community level, that we need diversity. So many communities are built around lack of diversity. This is the rule set: you're either in or you're out. Mm-hmm. And so the challenge is how do we collaborate, okay? Because we need diversity in our groups or they're not resilient, just like the landscape out there. I always use my mother as my sounding board, and I know you do too, Sienna, that if I can't see these inherent truths in nature, I really question them, when they're presented to me in life. So we need diversity for resilience, for strength, for adaptability. And this is the same when we collaborate. We need to collaborate with people that have a different worldview. Otherwise, our perspective is too narrow. And the challenge is that if we end up with a very large group, we fall into all these dynamic issues. We can't function with that many people. So the work I'm looking at is very small groups, but that do have enough diversity within them that they cover all of these key elements that we need to take the collaborative idea, get it clear about it, to dip down into the sacral well, to energize it, and then to lift it up through to point where we can manifest it and actually get a return on our collaborative investment. Because so often we come together to share ideas and collaborate, and it's wonderful and it's wonderful. And then all of a sudden the wheels fall off because someone says, well, this is really great, but it's a talk fest, And it's so much been my experience, and I know for most people, that we want to collaborate, but we're really, really reluctant because we've had so many experiences where it hasn't delivered what we were hoping it would deliver. I use the analogy of the Dodgem cars. I hope your listeners are familiar with them, where we go to Sideshow Alley and, we give them our $10 and we get in this little vehicle and we go around, they turn it on and we go around and we go bang into the other person. Someone hits us up the back and, it's pretty exciting for about 15 minutes, but thank God the bell goes and the power goes out of these things and shakenly we can get out of them and return to sanity on the edge, And I see this so much as the collaborative experience. Thank God, it's only a 15-minute experience. Otherwise, we'd all be cripples. And this is a little bit, the challenge of collaborating. But what this knowledge gives us means to become more functional in how we navigate ourselves in our sacred dance between our mind and our head and our heart. And but once we can do the dance within ourselves, then how we dance with the other and the others. And that's what I'm really looking forward to sharing the insights as I see them and hear from others and learn to collaborate, because this is really at the heart of us bringing this transformation that we yearn for in the world, is that it has to be a new shared blue that we're creating here. And at the moment, we so much want to be part of it. But this, when it comes to collaborating and actually sharing and painting a shared view of the world, that it's been hard for us, or certainly for me. And for those that want to dance, I'm keen to dance as well. And hopefully we can create even more beautiful dances going forward.
Thank you so much, Bud. I think we've come to the end of our hour here. We're going to do a second, maybe even a third podcast where we're going to put up some charts. I think my chart, I was reluctant, but I'm willing to be guinea pig, and even some group charts, and show how people connect and relate, and how communities can be built, and how we can have a wonderful, fun time manifesting ourselves, expressing ourselves, creating together, all the things that we're longing in our human hearts to do. And I know that we're going to do webinars and workshops. You're going to be hosting these and further roundtables, and we're going to create more and more places where we can interact and have practical application for this in the coming year. I see it as absolutely key for what is needed. So in the meantime, Bud, how would people get hold of you? Because you do private sessions as well, correct?
Yeah, correct. I do private sessions, group sessions. My email address is Bud, BOOD, at TPG, that's T for Tom, P for Paul, G for George, .com.au. I also have a phone number. In Australia, it's country code 61, and then my phone is 429 121212.
Thank you. And you can also contact Bud here on the screen share. We have Rise Multiversity, Bud's mentor page. Just click on it, and we have a contact button, Bud, and they can contact you that way.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adrian.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to conclude now, unless you have any final comments or anything else you wish to share. And we will be back, I believe, in a few weeks with a second podcast.
Yeah, we certainly will. And I just would like to close by, just how delighted I am to be part of the RISE community. This is very exciting to me to be able to engage at a global level. I'm very embedded in my local community here and at the regional level and, even at the national level here. But it's so delightful to be able to engage collectively. And I really am very appreciative of the opportunity to use Sienna and the whole of your RISE team.
It's time. It's time for us to come together. And it's so amazing how the people that have been listening deeply and doing the work are coming out of their remote areas. And we do have the beneficial aspects of AI in the internet, that we can have this global healing and education together. So thank all of you. And I encourage you all to be brave warriors and take your next steps. Come out of being internet voyeurs and information junkies, I mean, myself included, and become proactive in even small baby step ways to be the shift and change. This is how we're going to reach critical mass and end up in a more fifth dimensional reality, however that configures. It's going to be a global manifestation exercise, not just a global awakening exercise. Please do your part. It is so urgent now that you and I and we all shake off all of this attack and interference and limitation. We're under so much of it, so much stress, and find a way. And if we can be helped, come visit us, come engage in dialogue. We have a RISE private closed group community page. If you go to RISE Multiversity, click on it. We're in dialogue there. And RISE has its a website. We have past events. We're going to have future events. And we're going to be creating this program for world contributors to learn these skills. This is our giant baby steps, bringing Bud on. We're going to bring other people on. And if you have something to contribute, if you would like to bring your skill set, please contact me. I am open to this. This is not an elite club at all. This is a total grassroots movement. Contact me, Sienna Lea. I'll go to RISE Multiversity on my mentor page and click on the contact, and I will respond. I respond to everyone who contacts me because you are why we're doing this. So, much love.